Hello and welcome to another Satisfactory video. So I'm back in the white room. Want to talk again about this 5-way splitter. In the last video I showed you this design, demonstrated how it worked, and talked about why this actually does what it does and how the items flow through the system. And I shared the video to Reddit, and a Reddit user named Lundurro gave me some feedback about it. Said, hey, you can take this loop back, split it, and run it after the initial split. And so that broke my brain for a little bit, and I started thinking about it and realized, yeah, that might work. The problem with this I mentioned in the previous video on this, is that there's a throughput limit to this belt here. You can only get 1,000 items per minute coming through this belt. Now, this belt between the two can give you 1,200 items per minute, and then that means the splitter splits between here and here, 600 items and 600 items, right? So when I split 600 three ways and push them back, I'm pushing 200 items through this. Well, whenever we have a conflict or two items trying to enter that merger at the same time, it just picks one and it alternates. That means every sixth item, basically, that tries to come through here is gonna get pushed back and not be able to make it through. So that reduces the total number of items that you can push through the system down to 1,000 items per minute. So I thought about the design and got my head around it finally, and I thought I'd do a little bit of a demo. We can clear this out through the magic of editing and then build out a new 5-way splitter that doesn't have the same limitation. Now, it will have a slightly different design, and so I'll talk about some of the caveats for that one, but let's go ahead and wipe this out. First thing we need to do is just place a single splitter right at the entryway, and that's going to come out here. And notice I've taken out the sides because this is going to get a little wider than the last one. Once we start with that splitter, we're going to only use the left and right. We're not going to use the center. We're going to place a merger right next to each one of those. And you got to be careful to make sure that the mergers are facing in the right direction so that the green arrows face out. And add the belts. Then we're going to add another splitter. And again, this is going to go straight out of the merger. And then once we add the belts to this, oh, faced that the wrong way. Once we add the belts to this system, what we've got is very similar to the previous design for a 6-way splitter. These mergers aren't doing anything because they don't have any belts running into them yet. And so I'm going to get, at this splitter, 200 items off of each port if I've got a belt. Now, if I add a splitter here, I can take the output of this, and I've got 200 items coming through here, so I'm going to send 100 back in here, and 100 over to this side. Now, if we look at the number of items that you can get through this, it's 1,200 here, 600 coming into this belt, and 100 coming from this belt. That means this Mark 6 belt on the output is never going to be saturated in this design, and that removes the entire bottleneck. So all we have to do now is hook up the belts and we'll have it ready to go. All right, there we go. We've got the 5-way splitter and all the belts are connected, and let's test it out and make sure that it actually splits things the way we want. We'll drop 500 concrete and let it go. All right, that's it. Everything's through. So let's go check these storage containers. 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. So it's working exactly the way we want it to. We're splitting 5 ways evenly. And the only drawback to this is that it does take up a little bit more space. Something I'd like to see is a little bit of comparison between this design and the previous design. And you can see just how much longer it takes to run the items through that. And we're also going to try to compactify this just a little bit with some lifts. But to do that, I'm going to jump over into a creative world. This is the same 5-way splitter design that I just showed you, except using lifts. And if we look real close, you can see how it works. So notice that you have a splitter and a merger, right? It's the same thing we had last time. This goes up to a splitter, which will split 2 ways. And then the loop back comes into this splitter, which one of them goes into this, and the other one comes back down and around and into this. So that's going into both the splitters, and then the final one we just split off 3 ways. This design is functionally equivalent to the one that I just showed. It's just not laid out so that you can see how it works. This is the original design. This is much simpler, and just looking at it, it's easier to understand what's going on. But it has the throughput problem. So I wanted to just demonstrate how much longer it takes to get through the right-hand side than it does the left-hand side. So I built this little splitter. What I want is to be able to deliver 1,200 items per minute through this entry point, or try to at least. And so I've got a storage container here to act as a buffer, so if items back up, they'll keep going without limiting the flow out of this, because I don't want these belts to back up. The top belt goes in here, splits 2 ways, so I get 600 items per minute, 600 items per minute. Merge those into 1,200 items per minute, and I've got it back. So this won't back up, at least not with what I'm going to put into it. And then we should be able to see exactly how these split. And I'm going to start with, let's do 2 stacks. So it won't take quite as long. And there you go. I mean, you can see they're both running. If you see on the left, the belts look like they're running smoothly, and you may not even be able to tell on the right that this belt is lagging a little bit. It's got a hitch, and basically every 6th item that comes through stops that input belt. As you can see, the one on the left just finished, and now the one on the right is still going. And there you go. If you don't have more than 1,000 items per minute coming through a Mark 6 belt, you're never going to notice that this has slowed down, because it will run at 1,000 per minute just fine. This one, obviously it runs without any loss. It definitely does the even splitting, but it's a little harder to get right. This costs more, and you probably don't need it in most cases. When would I use this? I would use this when I know I absolutely have more than 1,000 items per minute, or whatever the belt limit is. You can actually calculate that. It's 5/6 of your belt limit. So multiply by 5. So if your belt limit, let's see, I always forget these. Let's go into logistics. 780. So if we have 780, let's divide it by 6, and then multiply by 5. So that would limit to 650 items per minute. If you don't have more than that on a Mark 5 belt. Most of the time that really only comes into play in the very early game, because that's when your resources are most limited and you might want to be able to distribute them, plus your belts are running much slower. You can't put as many items on there, so you really have to be careful of how you split them. Another case where you might want this is very late game, when you have quite a few items coming out. I think about copper powder for the pressurized cubes. You have a lot of those. If you find yourself needing to split those 5 ways and there's a lot of items coming through and you really want to maximize those 1,200 items per minute, use this. Any other time, this is probably sufficient. It has worked for me in a number of situations, and I've barely ever had any problem with that throughput rate. Mostly, if I've got a high enough throughput to max out a belt, I'm probably not going to build the splitter or distributor type of system. I'm going to use a manifold. So I'll put a link in the description. I've got a video talking about the difference between a manifold and a distributor system, with a few examples and some caveats to what you might want to watch out for. Also, I'll share a link in the description that Lundurro shared with me, which basically talks all about this for 5-way and 7-way splitters. There you go. There's a 5-way splitter with no bottleneck. Hope you enjoyed this. If you like this kind of thing, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if there's something specific that you would really like to see. Thanks. Bye.